Hey guys, it's Krystal, and I have here two new flagships with dual camera setups. Now the LG V20 just came out, and you might have heard all the buzz around its great camera, and yes, it has a great camera, both phones do, but all the hype is due to the LG V20's full manual mode controls with tons of features for photo and video. Now having said that, I'm not going to be testing that in this comparison. Both phones will be using auto mode because that's probably how most users will take their photos anyway. And you might have noticed both phones here have some D brand skins on them, and if you're interested for any phone you may have, check out that link in the description. Alrighty, let's get to it. Okay, so like all my camera comparisons, let's start out with some high dynamic range tests. Now here, both do a great job at exposing me properly, and also the sky, enough so that we're not losing details in either. And these two shots were both taken at the exact same time, right as the sun went behind a cloud, but we have big differences in saturation, temperature, and brightness. Now the LG V20 almost looks like the sun was shining more thanks to its extra vibrance and brightness, but does that mean it's better? Well, not necessarily, because the iPhone 7 Plus is a little more true to life with more realistic photos. So I want to know what you guys think. Throughout the video, leave a comment below saying which phone you think did the better job in these camera tests. So this is a pretty tough shot because I'm standing in the shadows while the background is in the bright sun, but both phones do a really good job. The backgrounds aren't overexposed on both, and the shadows aren't underexposed either. However, the V20 does make me and the shadows a little brighter, which is nice, and that's something that you'll see a lot, that the HDR on the iPhone 7 Plus is not as aggressive as the V20, so skies are bright, but the dark areas won't be balanced as well. Now, because of this, the iPhone 7 Plus creates more natural looking photos over the V20, especially when you compare colors. The V20's colors are more vibrant and also have a cooler color temperature when set to auto. Now let's see how the dual lenses come into play on both. The iPhone's second telephoto lens allows us to zoom in optically without adding any noise, and also since this is optical, backgrounds will look nicer when compared to digitally zooming in like I did here with the V20. In some scenarios, you're going to wish you had that telephoto lens on the iPhone 7 Plus, like the last picture, and some scenarios, you're going to wish you had the V20's wide-angle lens, like right here. Sometimes you just can't get far away enough to get your subject in the shot, and that is where the V20's wide-angle lens really shines. Now, it's not as high of a resolution as the main camera, but it still manages to create some really nice shots with lots of color. And now let's compare these shots at the normal focal lengths. Both photos look really great, but once again, you can really notice the cooler color temperature on the V20 along with its more vibrant colors. It also does a little better at exposing the blue of the sky, and detail is good on both, but a little better on the V20 thanks to its larger megapixel count. And here, there's really not too much of a difference between the photos, besides the obvious cooler colors again with the LG V20, and there's also a little more contrast with the V20, which gives objects a bit more of a defined look, which looks nice, but does make some of the darker areas lose some information. But this is a situation where you're going to want to switch to the V20's wide angle to get a full understanding of what we're looking at. Okay, so here's our last outdoor shot, and by now you can probably tell that both phones' cameras do a great job in outdoors, they just have different styles. So the LG V20 usually has more punched up colors and a cooler color temperature. So if we zoom in just to focus on the colors of the paint here, the differences in color are just enough to make the paint lean more towards the greener side on the iPhone and the bluer side on the V20. And here we can see the V20's HDR mode performing a little better. You can see more information within the shadows of the birdhouse, and if we zoom in again, you can see that extra detail coming from the V20's 16 megapixel sensor. Moving into low light, we start to see some bigger differences between the two. Both look pretty good. I mean, they're bright enough to see at least. But right off the bat, I noticed a more grainy image on the iPhone 7 Plus, and if we zoom in, you can really see that. And while we're zoomed in, you can see just how much sharper the V20's picture is if you take a look at the homemade ice cream sign. Now, if we scoot over a little to this window, the differences are night and day. You can actually make most of the writing on the V20 while you have no chance on the iPhone 7 Plus. Here we have the same differences we saw in the last picture. Both photos are quite bright, but we have more noise on the iPhone 7 Plus along with more grain, and you can already see the extra sharpness on the V20, but we'll zoom in a little so you can clearly see on YouTube. Now, some new differences here is how, unlike in outdoors, the V20 leans more towards a warmer side now, but that could be mostly due to the much more vibrant colors here. And with this last outdoor low light shot, this time the LG V20 does a much better job at brightening the image. The iPhone 7 Plus seems like it didn't try too hard to make the image brighter, and because of that, we actually do have less noise here. Now, this is probably because the iPhone 7 Plus decided to prioritize the bright areas, like the lamps and the ATM signs, so we can actually make those out better with the iPhone 7 Plus. But overall, the iPhone 7 Plus's photo is a lot more dull than the V20's, with less vibrant colors and a darker image, but this one is really going to come down to preference. Now, when it comes comes to the phone's second cameras, well, the iPhone 7 Plus's telephoto lens doesn't work in low light due to the lack of optical image stabilization. But the V20's wide angle does, although there's a big drop in quality. Moving on to an indoor shot, we can see one weakness from the V20's low light performance, and that's how its shadows tend to lean more towards a purple hue. The purple hue almost seems to put a haze on top of the whole image, and because of this, we can't really see the extra vibrancy in the V20. And the iPhone 7 Plus's photo is much more natural and colors are more accurate, but it does have more noise in the image, and if we zoom in, the V20 still manages to capture Buzz Lightyear's name tag better. So here, you'll have to decide if you prefer clarity or colors. Selfie taking on both phones are really nice, but there are tons of differences between the two. So first, we'll have to consider the angle of the lens. Now, the iPhone 7 Plus creates a much more cropped in photo, which I really don't like, especially when you're trying to show context as to where you are or trying to fit in a bunch of friends. But the V20's camera is much wider. You can see much more of my shirt and even my pants. And what's crazy is that the V20 shot here is a cropped picture. So we can actually go even wider by the controls within the camera interface, which I love, but still, this is just one lens doing both of these shots, and in terms of quality, I do think the iPhone 7 Plus does a better job. Its exposure is a little better, not clipping in the highlights of my face, and you get a lot more detail, which can be good or bad for selfies. For low light selfies, the same things can be said, but with a small drop in quality. The V20 is a lot brighter, although it clips in the highlights of the background, and the iPhone has a bit more detail, but you can notice more graininess to the iPhone 7 Plus's photo, where the V20 doesn't, but that's probably due to the V20's longer exposure it takes, which actually hurts the photo here. It can be a little hard to take clear pictures in low light with the V20 with that long exposure. But you can switch to the V20's non-cropped selfie image, which is identical when it comes to quality, but it's so wide that I can almost forgive the drop in quality if it means I actually get everything in the shot, which is great if you have a group of friends or something like that. So let's do a 4K video test. And remember, the LG V20 is jam-packed with tons of video features with crazy manual controls, including manual audio controls, which will probably make the V20 win hands down. But in this test, we're just testing the auto modes. So first off, the differences in color between the two are huge. The V20 is much more colorful. It's really impressive, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's better. It's all up to preference. Both do a great job at exposing highlights and shadows. You do have some extra contrast on the V20 though. And yes, you can take advantage of both phones' second cameras in video mode, and they both do a great job. In terms of steadiness, both phones have optical image stabilization, so they're both crazy smooth, but I do think the iPhone 7 Plus is a little less shaky. So looking at these photos and videos, we can definitely say that both phones' cameras do really great in auto mode, but it really comes down to what you think is better and what you are going to be using the photos for. And remember, the LG V20 has a very feature-packed full manual mode where the iPhone 7 Plus doesn't, so you can really tinker around with that on the V20 to get the shot to the exact way that you want it. But I'll be testing this further in my full review of the LG V20 coming to you within the next few days, so make sure you're subscribed for that, and also more camera comparisons where the V20 goes head-to-head with the Galaxy S7 and the Google Pixel, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you later.